Dogman versus Goatman. Dear Scary Stories at NYC. I've got a story for you that happened when I was a teenager. I've hardly ever told anyone about this, but now I'm old, and I no longer care if people think I'm making it up. I had to work jobs for years where I couldn't afford to look crazy so I could support my wife, but we're both retired now, so I'm gonna go for it. This is a story about a girl I dated before I met my wife, and this is a story about the Pennsylvania Dogman. These days, I hear people all the time saying they never heard of the Dogman until the 1990s, but this happened in the mid-1970s, and all my friends back then knew about the Pennsylvania werewolf. Granted, we didn't call it a Dogman, but it was a dog or wolf-headed man. It stood upright, and it was known in my group for chasing people our age out of lovers' lanes. Nobody I knew had ever seen one, but it seemed that most people had a friend of a friend story about these cryptids. I know I thought it was real, and I think most of the rest of us believed in it as well. We believed in Bigfoot too. He is also reported frequently in PA. We had no question as to the validity of these creatures. We never questioned their existence at all. At least I know I never did. So let's call my then girlfriend Carrie Ann, just because we can. The two of us were on a school trip where our grade was taken out to Gettysburg for a day of historical reenactments. They had a guy dressed as a Lincoln, and they had a bunch of old fat guys dressed up in period costumes so that they could stage a fat and slow version of one of the battles of the Civil War. Carrie Ann and I slipped away from our class and spent much of the day wandering around in the park, looking for places where we could have a little privacy, for a little hugging and a little kissing. People still do that today, don't they? I hope so. That was the best part of being young back in those days. I remember we ran into this really strange barefoot man with a giant wide-brimmed hat and clothes he looked like he sewed himself. He asked us where we were looking to go. I got shy, but Carrie Ann started telling him we were looking for some privacy. She barely got 2 words out, though, before the weird old guy interrupted her, saying, "What you're looking for is over there." We both looked over to where he was pointing, and all that was there was more trees. When we looked back at the old dude, though, he was gone already. I don't know where he went to, but Carrie Ann said he disappeared. I didn't know she meant literally. But someday afterward, she let me know she meant she saw him literally disappear, as in quickly fade out of existence. On that day when this happened, though, I thought she meant he figuratively disappeared, as in he skedaddled away. So possibly that is another mystery to add to this story, but I didn't see it myself. I didn't see him fade out, so I don't really know. Nevertheless, we walked in the direction that the strange man had suggested, and eventually, we found ourselves in Devil's Den, on Sickles Avenue, as the sun was going down. Devil's Den is a place with outcroppings of really huge rocks and boulders, and sadly, it's also a place where Americans did terrible things to other Americans. Horrible tragedies took place almost everywhere you look over there, but we had no idea on that day. To us, it was a romantic sundown, and we were just looking for some privacy. I remember we pulled each other into this little alcove made of trees, just off the sidewalk path they want you to stay on. We were mostly hidden from anyone walking by, and so we finally had a chance to pay attention to each other. I'm not sure how long we were there, but when a strange noise made me come up for air, I noticed it had gotten pretty dark, pretty fast. So I had no idea at all what that strange sound was that we were hearing approach us, but at first, it sounded kinda funny, like a really annoyed dog making begging sounds, as though it wanted to go out, but nobody would open the door for it. I moved myself to a position where I could see out of our little natural alcove, and I saw some tree leaves shaking and moving. Looking even more intently, I watched as I saw something that made me feel like Carrie Ann must have had something hallucinogenic in her lipstick. I was seeing something crazy, as well as something that made me very, very afraid. Out of those woods marched, no, not a dogman, but something that appeared to be the devil himself. This creature had cloven hooves, and yet he walked upright, the same as you or I. He had long horns on his head and a beard under his chin. His eyes glowed like something from outer space, or maybe Hades. It was a big brown goat, standing up and walking like a man. It must have been 6 feet tall. It was man-sized, and yet it was some sort of bipedal goat. Now, I had heard of living werewolves. I had heard of lake monsters. I had heard of the puckwudgie and the snallygaster, but I had never, ever heard of an upright walking goat man. Nevertheless, that is precisely what I found myself eyeballing. In that moment of shock and surprise, I didn't notice that it was not the goat man which was making the strange whining noises I had heard earlier. It was the creature following the goat man, because yes, another far larger bipedal creature emerged from the woods, following that goat-headed beast man. This one was a werewolf, or dogman. It walked behind the goat man, who must have been over a foot shorter than that canine creature was. In spite of his size advantage, the big brown dogman seemed desperate to gain control of this situation. The dog was the one we had been hearing approaching. He whined and yelped and yapped and snapped at the goatman, trying to get his attention. But the goatman just kept trying to walk away from the dogman. He wanted no conflict with the larger beast, but when they got out into the opening in front of us, that dogman reached out and grabbed the goatman by the shoulder. He spun him around so that they were facing each other. Then, that dogman got right in the goatman's face, shouting at him like a boss threatening to fire an employee. I could not understand what I was looking at. I did not get the relationship going on here. I couldn't comprehend why the dogman wasn't either attacking the goatman or leaving him alone. And I couldn't understand the reaction the goatman had to this constant harassment. He didn't seem too upset about any of this, and I wondered about his intelligence level. Maybe he just wasn't smart enough to understand that he was in danger. I had completely forgotten about my girlfriend Carrie Ann, but then I noticed her trying to take photos with the Instamatic camera she had brought with her on the school trip. She pointed out to me silently through pantomime that the camera wasn't working, and handed it to me so I could try it. Sure enough, the button wouldn't go down when I pressed it. I was unable to snap any pictures of anything, and we never figured out why the camera didn't work, as later that very night, we did snap a photo at a place we stopped to get some dinner. It worked fine earlier, and it worked fine a couple hours afterward, in other words. So, that dogman just kept bothering that goatman, until goatman flipped out and started screaming at the dogman in a language that sounded like it came from hell itself. I looked at that goatman, and his tongue was flying all around outside his mouth as he shouted. His eyes looked in different directions, and he made such a racket, my eardrums hurt, and my heart beat so hard that I thought it would melt through my rib cage onto the rocky ground. As we watched, the goatman turned and trotted down the sidewalk away from the dogman, his hooves clop, clop, clopping on the concrete. I thought he was running away, but then that goatman turned and lowered his head, charging back toward the dogman. Well, I never heard such a mournful cry as an unstoppable force rammed hard into that dogman's chest, sending him flying backward. If you think Will Smith packs a wallop, You should have seen the goat man on that day. Well, that seemed to be what the Dogman had been waiting for. He was no longer content with just bothering that goat man. Now, he was sinking his teeth and claws in. And the two of them rolled around on the stones and the sidewalk, tearing into each other in such a destructive manner that it was clear these two bore no affection for each other. I apologize for not being able to report the winner of the fight, as Carrie Ann and I beat it out of there, while the monsters were preoccupied with their battle. They both made such terrible noises as we ran away that I couldn't tell which one was winning. You know, there's another weird part to this story. As we ran away, we literally ran into a Civil War reenactor in full uniform. We were both clearly distraught in that moment, and he asked us what we were so afraid of. We told him what we had just seen and escaped from. The young man wearing the uniform of the North looked off in the direction we came from, with a serious look on his face, and he assured us that he and his men would deal with these strange animals. He told us that for our own safety, we should head back toward where his regiment was camped. We had no idea what he was talking about, so he headed back toward the cryptids in the encroaching night, and we got out of that park entirely. Carrie Ann thought that both that man and the barefoot man from earlier were ghosts, but I ran face first into that second man, and he certainly seemed physically real to me. Nevertheless, Carrie Ann told me that neither of those men had really walked that ground for well over 100 years. I can't find very much literature online on the kind of goat man that we saw. It was not a faun. It did not have a human or devilish head. It had the head of a goat. In fact, it was in every way a goat, other than its ability to walk upright. It did not have hands or claws. It had hooves. I can't explain it. I can only tell you what we saw. To be honest, I had expected both of these creatures to be officially discovered and named by science years ago. I don't think either of us knew how rare the creatures were that we had been watching. Also, in that era, I think everybody felt that UFOs and monsters were on the verge of being explained. We expected answers to nearly every question within our lifetime, but I have to admit, we've never really gotten any clear answers about Dogman versus Goatman. Linda Hagler, Talon the Raven. It's our channel that she be savin'. Please join us in thanking Talon the Raven for making this episode possible. In exchange for her kind contributions, Linda gets to see our weekly secret uncensored Dogman stories, far too wild to ever tell on this channel. Now here's international TV spokesmongrel Henry Lee Dogman to fill in the rest of the deets. Hank? Thanks for watching till the end. If you liked what you saw, please consider clicking like on the video or sharing it with your friends and family that you think might also be interested. If you would like to see more of our work, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon next to the subscribe button so that YouTube will alert you when we put out a new video. To become a channel member and gain access to our special perks, you can click that join link under each of our videos. Another option is to join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. You can join for as little as 99 cents on YouTube or $1.50 at peterbernard.com, and that gains you access to our weekly secret uncensored episodes. If you'd like to see our 21 hours of archives of uncensored Dogman stories, then please join at the $3 level or above. To get to watch our shows in advance of the public, please join at our $10 level. That gets you all the perks. If you join our channel memberships, you need to check our community page here on YouTube in order to get the links to the secret videos and other perks. If you're in the PayPal subscribers club, Peter will email you all the news and links himself. Once joining the PayPal club, which is Peter's homemade club, please give him a chance to see that you've joined and to compose you a personal welcome email, as none of that is automated. But whichever you join, we'll name you an executive producer for the next available episode. Do you have a scary experience that you'd like to share with us? You can email us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or call our Scary Stories voicemail hotline at 804-LA-SCARY. That's 804-537-2279. It's a Google voicemail box, so that means it keeps cutting off after every 3 minutes. If your story is longer than that, please keep calling back and we can piece it together on our end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.